Hello guys, this is Mrs. Tran-Bloom. You should be super excited right now because we are on after this section we have one more. So we're on 1.7 right now. Our last section is 1.8 and then we can study for our test. So 1.7 says basic factoring. So the hint is when you're factoring, you always should look for the greatest common factor. Okay? So examples 1 to 5, factor out the GCF, which stands for greatest common factor, and check by using the distributive property. So the distributive property, I'm just changing my pens here, meaning that you're gonna want to multiply it back, okay? So let's go. 9x to the fourth plus 3x to the third plus 12x squared. Okay, we want to know what is the greatest common factor. That means the word factor itself, meaning that numbers when you multiply, okay? So 2 times 3 equals 6, meaning that 2 and 3 are factors of 6. Like number 10, we can have factors of 2 times 5 or 1 times 10. I mean, so is number 6, right? You can always have 1 times 6. So that's what it means to say factors. Now 9 and 3 and 12, they all have a factor of 3 in common. So we want to factor that out. And I'm going to get myself some space down here. What does that mean when I say factor it out? I mean, okay, well, we're going to eventually divide it out. Now, what's next is x to the fourth, x to the third, and x squared. What is the greatest number of x's do they all have in common? And that means I have x squared in common. So when we say factor it out, that means each and every term now gets divided by 3x squared. That's the greatest factor that they all have in common. So when I divide them out, I should have leftovers. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. X to the fourth divided by x squared. What does that mean by dividing? That means I have 4 x's on the top and then 2 x's on the bottom because it's x squared. So I should have x squared left. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So technically we could write a 1. X to the third divided by x squared is now 1x left. But normally we don't write the 1 in the front of the x. So we can keep it there, but we don't have to. Next, we're going to go 12 divided by 3 is 4. X squared divided by x squared again, technically is 1. But 4 times 1, as you know, is already just 4. So this is how we factor the GCF. Now, on the bottom here, I give you a little space for where it says check, okay? What does that mean by checking? Checking means you write it out and you multiply back to see if we give the original problem. Here we go. 3x squared times 3x squared is going to be 9x to the fourth. 3x squared times x is now positive 3x to the third. 3x squared times 4, that's going to give us 12x squared. And this right here should always be exactly the same as our original, okay? Number 2, 16m squared and 12mn. So 16 and a 12, as you know already, they both have a 4 in those two numbers. Now, between an m squared and an mn, as you know, m squared, there's 2 m's. So the most we can take out, it's an m. So now we know we need to divide both sides. I'm going to erase really quickly because I don't want to make a big mess here. So what happened if we divide both sides by 4m? Oh, that's one extra curve there. 4m, okay? So 16 divided by 4 is 4. M squared divided by m, it's just now an m. Okay, that means there's 2. That means one of them is going to be canceled, just like that. 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3. The m's and m will cancel, so now you just have an n left. Okay, and then I want you to write it again and check it to see if we did that correctly. Example 3. Go ahead and try to find the GCF on your own. What do you think the GCF is? I want you to give it a good chance to figure it out. Hopefully you said just 3. Okay, then we're going to divide each and every term by 3. So that's going to give us just an x squared minus 2x minus 10. And box that up. And go ahead and check that for me down here. Okay, let's move down to number 4 and number 5. Number 4 looks ultra scary, isn't it? Number 4, again, similarly, we're going to attempt the GCF with all those numbers first. So we're going to put the spot up here and then do a parentheses here. Okay, 26, let's see. 26, I can say that it's going to be 2 times 13. 39, it's going to be what? 3 times 13. 52. If you don't know any better, guys, you can always start with a 2 when it's an even number, okay? And you can go like this, okay, well, 2, and then that's going to be 26, and you can go even further. That's 2 times 13, like that. And then 13 is just simply 1 times 13. So if we're just looking at the number, they all have 13 in common. So we are going to take out a 13, okay? That's how you should do it if you can't think straight up what number they have in common. List out all of the factors. Now let's look at the x's first. That's x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared, and x. So as you can see, they all have at least one x in each term. Now let's look at the y. We have 1 y here, 2 y's here, 3 y's here, and 4 y's here. So they all have 1 y in common. Okay, and I'm just going to erase because then it doesn't look like some crazy mess. All right, divide each term by the GCF. Okay, now earlier we kind of wrote it out, so we know 26 divided by 13 is 2. X to the 4th divided by x. I mean, there's 4 x's on the top, 1 x on the bottom, so now you should have 3 x's left. Y's and y's already cancel. This one's going to give us 3. There are 3 x's on the top, 1 x on the bottom. We should have x squared left. 2 y's on the top, 1 y on the bottom. We should have 1 y left. 52 divided by 13. Just a minute ago, we said that was going to be 4. X squared on the top, and then x on the bottom. We should have 1 x left. Y to the 3rd, 3 y's. That means there's 3 y's on the top. So that means we should have y squared. And then lastly, minus. Well, 13 divided by 13 is 1. X and x is canceling. So now we should have y to the 3rd. And this one, we can box that up. Okay. Now go ahead and check that for me to make sure we did it correctly. Number 5, similarly, 5, 10, and 175. 175 ends with a 5, so we know it is going to be divisible by 5. So I know at least I can take out a 5. There's an x squared here, an x here, but no x here. So an x cannot be taken out. So the biggest, greatest common factor for 5x squared minus 10x minus 175, which is a 5. So divide each term by 5. Okay, why don't you go ahead and get a head start to tell me what we have left over after we factor out a 5. Okay, hopefully you guys factor out a 5. We have x squared left minus 2x minus. All right, guys, before we attack the next part of this, go ahead and hit pause and copy down these 3 steps. These should be blank lines on your notes packet. Okay, so step number 1, break the expression into 2 sets of binomials, or aka break it into half. Number 2, factor the GCF from each set of binomial. Step number 3, factor out the GCF from the entire expression. It is now in factor form. Number 1, 2x to the 3rd plus 5x squared minus 4x minus 10. So the guideline said, break it into 2 sets of binomial. And then it says, okay, now factor out independently the GCF from each set. 2x to the 3rd, 5x squared. The 2 and the 5 are prime numbers, so they only have 1 in common, which we don't need to factor out a 1. But they do have an x to the 3rd and x squared. So we can at least factor out an x squared. once you factor out x squared, so class, you can go and technically do this on your own, okay? But I'm gonna stop doing that. But if you still need to do that, please go and continue to do that on your own. Okay, then I'm gonna go 2x to the third divided by x squared is now 2x. 5x squared divided by x squared is now going to be 5. Now, can you see the sign right here in the middle? It's a negative, you drop down a negative. So you drop down negative, then decide what the GCF is. A 4 and a 10, they're even, so we know they have a 2 in common. Now this is where it's unique. You are dividing each term here by a negative 2 because we took out that negative right there. So negative 4x divided by negative 2 is positive 4x. Negative 10 divided by negative 2 is now positive 5. So we went from 4 terms, really, to 2 terms. And when I say 2 terms, the reason is that this is separated by just a minus, okay? So we are going to factor again from these two. Can you guys see that they both have 2x plus 5 in common? Then we factor that out. Okay, so what do we mean by that? Okay, we mean by, okay, I'm going to divide each side by 2x plus 5, just like that. We've been doing that all along, right? So bam, bam, cancel, bam, bam. What? You have x squared minus 2 left? Yes, we do, and we box that up. And that is as far as we can go. Okay. Number 2, x to the 4th plus 7x to the 3rd plus 5x squared plus 35x. Okay, the first thing I should really reminded you guys was check for GCF, which let's go back to number 1 really quickly to see if we can take out a GCF to begin with. Okay, number 1, 2x to the 3rd plus 5x squared minus 4x minus 10. There's no GCF because not all the terms have x's and not all the terms can be divisible by 2 or 5. So good thing we got lucky on that one. So number 2, let's check for GCF. Number 1, the first term that is has a leading coefficient of 1, so we know there's not any number factor that they have in common. But we have x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x squared, and x. So at least we can do is factor out an x. So now this should be x to the 3rd plus 7x squared plus 5x and plus 35. Then take the remaining 4 terms and break those into 2 sets of binomial. This right here, this green one right here, we're going to save it for now. Okay, that will be part of our answer because you know our answer is going to be that in the front and then 2 quantities. So next we will break that into 2, the leftover. X to the 3rd and x squared, we know they have an x squared in common. Then we are going to have an x plus 7 left. This is a plus sign, so drop that straight down. These both have 5 in common. So 5x divided by 5 is x. 35 divided by 5 is 7. So now you can factor this out. Now, anytime you see after factoring out the GCF from each binomial, after breaking it into 2 halves here, and you can see that you have a quantity that's exactly the same, that means this question is factorable. So we will take out an x plus 7. Okay, that means that's already gone. So you are left with an x squared plus 5. So that's going to get filled in down here with the GCF that we factor out from the very beginning, and we box that up. On number 3, we have 10x to the 3rd minus 40x squared plus 3x minus 12. Again, let's get into a good habit at looking for GCF. We have a 10, a 40, a 3, and a 12. There's none between those, and then we have x to the 3rd, x squared, x, and no x. So right now, this one we don't have a GCF. Let's split it up. Okay, so 10x to the 3rd and 40x squared. Ooh, okay, well, cool. We can take out 10. They both have 10 in common. X to the 3rd and x squared, we can definitely take out an x squared. 10 divided by 10 is 1. X to the 3rd divided by x squared is x. 40 divided by 10 is 4. x squared divided by x squared is 1, but we don't need to write times 1 at the end of 4. Now drop the plus sign down. 3 and 12, they both have 3 in common. So now we have x minus 4 left for those. Remember, always check to see these right here are exactly the same. If they are, then that means this is factorable. And then we can take that out. Once we take that out, we have 10x squared left and then plus 3. Box that up. 4, 3x to the third minus 15x minus 40 plus 8x squared. Now that looks kind of funky to me. I always like to write my expression in order from highest degree. And when I say degree, I mean highest power here. So I'm just going to put it in order before I break it up. Okay? And maybe it doesn't work when I put it in order. So who knows? So 3x to the third plus 8x squared. 3 and the 8, they don't have anything in common, but the x to the third and x squared, I can definitely take out an x squared. So now we are left with 3x plus 8. I'm going to hold on tight right there. Now because this is a minus, we're going to drop the minus down. 15 and 40, I know they're both divisible by 5, so at least I'm going to try to take out a 5. Negative 15 divided by negative 5 is now positive 3x. Negative 40 divided by negative 5 is now a positive 8. Woohoo! Lucky us. We have that and that right there in common. So we can totally factor that out again. So 3x plus 8, box that up. We are left with x squared minus 5. Bam! Box that up. And let's quickly glance at GCF again, because again, I forget to ask if we have a GCF. So 3, 8, negative 15, and negative 40, they don't have anything in common. X to the third, x squared, x, and there's nothing with 40. They don't have anything in common either. So there's no GCF here. And again, just be good and check that first, because sometimes they do have a GCF like number 2. Trinomial factoring. So a trinomial is 3 terms. So we have ax squared plus bx plus c. This is actually your quadratic formula. I mean, not formula, it's like quadratic equation. So, and mind you, here, read this right here. Okay, if you already know how to factor, you do it your way. Okay, you do not, again, I'm repeating, you do not have to do any of the methods I'm showing you here. So same thing with the trinomial factoring. Some of you are doing guess and check. Totally fine by me. You do not have to do the method I'm showing you. Okay, so, but if you don't know how to do it, this is how I am teaching you. Or if you don't remember from Algebra 1, because this skill is really an Algebra 1 review. But if you know how to do it, take away with your method. So the guideline says, factor at GCF if possible. Identify the coefficients, A, B, and C. Okay, now if you pick up a packet from Mrs. Lloyd or from Mrs. Lassner on campus, this part may be slightly different. You can cross it out and make it this way, or just email me and then I will send you a video that is exactly the same as it's stated on your packet when you pick up from Mrs. Lloyd and Mrs. Lassner. For organization, make a really big X. Multiply the first coefficient, which is your A, and your C together, and write on top of this big X. And yes, we are going to work this out together. Write the B value on the bottom of the big X that we just made. Find 2 numbers on the, which is where we're going to write on the side of the X, in which the product equals A times C and the sum equals B. Then write your original expression, replacing B with the sum of your factors and factor by grouping. So that's where you have to know how to factor by grouping first. Since earlier I keep forgetting to find the GCF, what I'm going to do on each of this is I'm going to write GCF on the top, because I want us to always check for GCF and get into a good habit of that. Okay. 5 times the quantity of x squared minus 2x minus 35. So number 5, they were kind enough to already take out the GCF for us. So later we are just going to stick it to the front of our answer. So this is what our answer will be. So according to the guidelines, it said, okay, well, identify A, B, C, A, and it's always A, B, C after you take out the GCF. A is 1, which is in front of x squared. B is -2. C is -35. Make your big X, and it says on the top is A times C, and in the middle is B. So 1 times -35 is -35. In the middle is just -2. So now I want you to go through the factors of -35. -35 is 1 times 35. All right, well, we can stick in the negative later. And then, let's see, 5 times 7, that's also 35. Now, which one of those is going to add to give me a -2? It's most likely going to be 5 and 7. And no, you can write 5 on the left and 7 on the right. Now, when you multiply, it's negative, so one of it's got to be negative, and when you add, it has to be -2, so the bigger has got to be -2. And the guideline said, okay, everything should be the same except the terms in the middle. So I'm going to copy the x squared over. I'm going to copy the 35 over. Okay, I'm going to make a separation here, so there you go. So that's a -35. Now take out the -2 and substitute it with these that we have. So we're going to take -7x and a positive 5x is what we are exchanging. It should not change the original expression. And from here, you will factor by grouping. X squared minus x, you would have an x in common. Then we have x minus 7. 5x minus 35, you have a 5 in common. Then you are going to have an x minus 7 left again. Sorry, that's my alarm. Then, as you can see, these two are exactly the same. So we can factor that out. Bam and bam. And you're left with an x plus 5. Now, don't forget, if you take out a GCF, it should always be in the front of your answer. Number 6, 6a to the third plus 19a squared plus 10. So 6, 19, and 10, they don't have anything in common because 19 is a prime number. But we know the GCF, they all have an a in each. So let's factor that out. A, you are left with 6a squared plus 19a plus 10. Okay. Earlier, I told you that once you factor out the GCF, this a is going to be part of our answer all the way down here. So just get into a good habit at dropping it down right away. And then I'm just going to list out the ABC from what we just wrote. A is 6, B is 19, C is positive 10. Now, only for organization purposes is what the X is really for, okay? On the top, A times C. A is 6, C is 10, so 6 times 10 is 60. In the middle, or on the bottom, is going to be your B value, which is 19. So now you have to find two numbers, multiply, give you 60. So the factor of 60 is going to be 1 and 60, 2 and 30, and mind you, you're going to have to add to equal to 19. So as you're doing this, you have to keep all of this in your head, okay? Now you got 3 times 20, and then you want to keep going. So why don't you take a second and make the list of all of them to see if you can find two numbers when you add, give you 19. Okay, 4 and 15. Ding, 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 ding. That would work. So 4 and 15. So we are going to rewrite everything. We are going to keep the 6a squared in the front. We will keep the 10, positive 10 in the back. Take out the 19a and write in 15a and 4a. All right, now it's a factor by grouping time. 6a squared and 15a, you would have 3a in common. So once we take out 3a, you have 2a left plus 5. 4a and 10, you're going to have 2 in common. You will have 2a left and also plus 5. These two are exactly the same, meaning that it's factorable. So if it's factorable, we factor that out. bam, and bam. Then we have 3a plus 2 left in that box. Example 7. Now, as you can see, the first thing we want to check for is the GCF. So we'll look at the 2, the negative 11, and the negative 21. Those numbers don't have anything in common. And we have an x squared, negative, and then we have an x with the negative 11, and then the 21, we don't have any x's there. So currently, this tells me that I do not have any GCF. Okay, so no GCF. Now, A, B, C, that's what we want to start listing. A is 2, B is negative 11, C is going to be negative 21. Your x, the organization x, on top, we will multiply A times C. So 2 times negative 21 is negative 42. And the B value, whoops, goes in the middle, which is, I should write negative 11. Now, when you are making a list of the factors for 42, okay, so 1 times 42, that would definitely not add to give me negative 11. 2 times 21, nope, not really. 3, okay, so 3 goes into 42 how many times? What we want to do is 14. Now, when we add, it's definitely not going to give us a negative 11, but because one of those got to be negative, because your number on the top is a negative 42. So one of it's got to be negative, one of it's got to be positive. Because there's a negative 11 on the bottom, the bigger number's got to be negative. So what we're going to do next is we're going to rewrite let me get a different color. 2x back down, drop the negative 21 back down, take away the negative 11 and write negative 14x and a positive 3x. Remember, when we add those together, it has to equal to negative 11. That's why it works. So from here, we have 4 terms. We factor by grouping. Bam, and bam, and bam. The first group, as you can see, we can take out a 2x. That means we have 1x left and a minus 7. There's a positive in front of the 3x. That means we drop down the positive sign. Take out a 3. We have x minus 7. Always, always check these two right there. If they are not identical, that means you did something wrong, or if it's not, or that it's not factorable, and then you have to move things around a little bit. So those are identical. We will take that out. Bam and bam. That means you're left with 2x plus 3. Box it up, and those are the factors. Now, mind you, you can always rewind, press pause, right? Multiple things for you to finish copying down your notes. Now again, and I mentioned this earlier, if you have a really good way of factoring since Algebra 1, don't change it. Do it your way. Okay? Let's do number 8. GCF, 18x squared. So 18, negative 9, and negative 2, we don't have anything in common. X squared and x and no x again, so no GCF. None and none. Okay, so A is 18, B is negative 9, C is negative 2, organization X. On the top, A times C. Sorry, that's supposed to say negative 2. That's going to be negative 36, so it's 18 times a negative 2. Then this is negative 9. All right, let's list out all the factors of 36. 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12. So the 3 times 12 might do it, although both of them could not be positive. So we have to change this into a negative, because when we multiply, we have to equal negative 36. And when we add, we have to equal to negative 9. So the bigger number has to be the negative. Okay, so next I'm going to drop down 18x squared. I'm going to drop down the negative 2, take out the negative 9x, and rewrite it with negative 12x and a positive 3x. And factor by grouping. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. On the first 2 terms, we can take out the GCF. What is the greatest GCF between 18x squared and 12x? Go ahead and take a moment to think about it. Hopefully you said 6x. So if we take out a 6x, 18 divided by 6 is 3. X squared divided by x is now just x. Negative 12x divided by 6x is now a negative 2. Now this is a plus sign, so drop it down. Can you see that 3x minus 2 technically don't really have a greatest common factor except a 1? We still take out the 1, okay, in this case. And now that shows these two are exactly the same. Now what's happening is if you guys don't write the 1 right here, your mistake would be that you're not going to know. So what's happening is, okay, sure, you have this here. But if you don't write the 1, most of us would just write like that as an answer, which is incorrect. It's really 6x plus 1. So do yourself a favor and just write the 1 in the front. Number 9, 9y squared minus 22y plus 3, GCF, we don't have any. Make your ABC, A is 7, B is negative 22, C is 3, organization X. 7 times 3 is 21, negative 22 in the bottom. This one's nice and easy because when I do 1 times 21, those are the two factors of 21. I don't need to go any further because if I just make both of them negative, negative times a negative is a positive 21, and when I add them, it gives me a bigger negative. So I'm going to drop down my 7y squared, drop down my positive 3, take out the negative 22y and plug in negative 21y, and again negative 1y. Now if you don't like writing negative 1y, fine, write negative y. It doesn't matter, okay? So if you want it back, put it back. So factor by grouping because we have 4 terms, okay? Repeat after me. To factor 4 terms, we have to use factor by grouping. Now take out the GCF of between 7y squared and a negative 21y. So we will take out 7y. That will leave us with just 1y and a negative 3. Now as you remember before, this is a negative sign, so we are technically going to factor out a negative number. We don't have anything in common between a negative 1y and a positive 3, so we are going to take out a negative 1. Now we take out negative 1, we have a y left. Now this is really cautious here. We are really dividing that by negative 1, okay? So that means this is now going to turn into a negative 3. If you're not cautious on that, you're not going to have the same sign, so that means those two will be different, and that's incorrect. So those are now the same, meaning that we did something correct, and then we drop these all down. Okay, on number 10, 3x squared plus 12x minus 15. Ooh, we do have a GCF. They all have a 3 in it. So first thing we want to do is factor out a 3. So we are now left with x squared plus 4x minus 5. Okay, so your answer would definitely have a 3 in the front, and then looking for 2 more factors. Your A is now 1, your B is 4, your C is negative 5, and be mindful when you're listing out A, B, and C, it's always after we have checked for GCF. Okay. Now, organization X goes like this. On the top, 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. In the middle is 4. So the factor is just going to be 5 and 1. But when I multiply 5 and 1, it's not a negative 5. So one of it's got to be negative. Now in this one, I'm going to assign the negative to the smaller one because the bottom is a 4. And when we add them, it has to be positive 4. So the bigger number now has to be positive. Next, we are going to drop down the x squared. Remember, I already dropped down the 3 at the very bottom. And then drop down the negative 5. Take out the 4x and write in negative 1x and positive 5x. Okay, and bam, and bam, and bam. The first 2 terms, as you can see, we have an x in common. So we can take that out. Now we can have an x minus 1. The second 2 terms, 5 is the greatest common factor, x minus 1. Those 2 are identical, so now we can write them in here. That means you're left with an x plus 5. And I already boxed that up, so I don't need to box it again. Now before I wrap it up, let me just tell you a joke that my kids told me earlier. What does one eye say to the other eye? What does one eye say to the other eye? Between us, something smells. You get it? There's your nose. Your nose is between one eye and the other eye. All right, that is it for 1.7.